What would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted most had been systematically destroying your life while you slept? Before we begin this story, type in the comments which city you're listening from, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so this channel can keep growing and bringing you even more powerful stories like this one. The smell of cheap coffee and photocopier ink was the first thing that greeted Marina's senses when she opened her eyes. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, and her mouth felt like sandpaper. She blinked several times, trying to focus on her surroundings. She wasn't in a hospital. She was slumped over her desk in the small accounting office where she'd worked for the past 7 years. The clock on the wall read 3:47 a.m. Her computer screen glowed with a spreadsheet she didn't remember opening, and her hands were stained with ink from a pen that had leaked all over important client documents. Marina's heart began to race. This wasn't the first time she'd woken up like this, disoriented and confused, with hours missing from her memory. Over the past 6 months, these blackouts had become more frequent. She'd chalked it up to stress and exhaustion from working 2 jobs to support her husband Garrett's entrepreneurial ventures that never seemed to go anywhere. She stood up shakily, her legs weak, and noticed something that made her blood run cold. Taped to her computer monitor was a yellow sticky note in handwriting that looked like hers, but she had no memory of writing it. Check the security footage. He's been here. Marina's hands trembled as she pulled the note off the screen. Who had been here? And why couldn't she remember writing this warning to herself? With growing dread, she navigated to the office security system that she had access to as the senior accountant. She scrolled back through the footage from earlier that evening. At 11:34 p.m., she saw herself at her desk, working normally. Then, at 11:52 p.m., the office door opened. Garrett walked in. Her husband, who was supposed to be at home sleeping, entered her workplace in the middle of the night. Marina watched the screen, unable to look away. Garrett approached her desk with a smile, holding 2 coffee cups from her favorite cafe. She saw herself on the video smile back and accept the cup gratefully. They talked for a few minutes, though there was no audio. Then Marina watched herself drink the coffee. Within 10 minutes, her movements on the screen became sluggish. Her head began to bob. And then she saw Garrett guide her head down onto the desk, positioning her carefully. What happened next made Marina's stomach turn. Garrett sat down at her computer and began typing rapidly, occasionally pulling papers from her locked drawer using a key he must have copied. He worked for nearly 3 hours, photographing documents with his phone, transferring files to a USB drive, and at one point, using her fingerprint while she was unconscious to access secure client accounts. Before he left, he placed her hand around a pen and seemed to force her fingers to write something, the sticky note, before carefully placing it where she would see it. The last thing the video showed was Garrett kissing her forehead tenderly, as if she were his sleeping child, before walking out at 2:43 a.m. Marina stumbled backward from the computer, her mind reeling. The blackouts. The missing time. The mornings she'd woken up exhausted with no memory of the night before. It wasn't stress. It wasn't exhaustion. Her husband had been drugging her. Marina's legs gave out, and she collapsed into her chair. Her mind raced through the past 6 months, and suddenly, everything made a horrifying kind of sense. The special dinners Garrett had started preparing for her. The expensive coffee he'd bring home as treats after her long shifts. The way he'd insist she drink the herbal tea he made for her headaches. Every kind gesture had been poisoned. With shaking hands, Marina pulled out her phone and did what she should have done weeks ago. She called her best friend, Yara, who worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. Marina? It's 4 in the morning. What's wrong? Yara's voice was thick with sleep but quickly sharpened with concern. I need your help. I need it now. Marina's voice cracked. Garrett's been drugging me. I have proof. I don't know what to do. There was a pause, then Yara's voice came back, fully awake and deadly serious. Don't move. Don't touch anything else. I'm calling my boss and we're coming to you. Record everything. Save that footage to the cloud right now. 20 minutes later, Yara arrived with her boss, attorney Simone Chun, a woman whose reputation for destroying abusive spouses in court was legendary. Simone watched the security footage 3 times, her expression growing colder with each viewing. Do you have any idea what he was accessing? Simone asked. Marina nodded slowly. Client financial records. Account numbers. Investment portfolios. I manage accounts for some very wealthy people, including several local business owners and... She paused, the realization hitting her like a freight train. And his own father. His father? Yara looked confused. Marina's hands clenched into fists. Garrett's father, Richard, is my biggest client. He's a real estate developer worth millions. Richard and Garrett have been estranged for 5 years because Richard cut him off financially, said Garrett needed to learn to work for his own success. Garrett always resented that I got hired to manage Richard's accounts when we were already married. He said it was humiliating that his wife worked for his father. Simone's eyes narrowed. And now Garrett has access to his father's financial information. Account numbers. Investment details. Security questions, probably if you're the account manager. The implications crashed over Marina like a wave. He's going to steal from his own father. And he's setting me up to take the fall. Simone pulled out her laptop. We need to move fast. Do you have access to your home computer remotely? Yes, why? Because if he's been drugging you at home too, there might be evidence there. And if he's planning to frame you for financial crimes, he's probably been building that frame very carefully. An hour later, Marina sat in Simone's car outside her own home, the modest townhouse she'd bought before marrying Garrett. In the early morning darkness, it looked peaceful, ordinary. She knew better now. Are you ready? Simone asked gently. Marina nodded. With Yara beside her for support, she unlocked the front door as quietly as possible. Garrett would be asleep in their bedroom, or so she hoped. They moved silently through the house. Marina led them to Garrett's office, the spare bedroom he'd claimed for his endless parade of failed business ventures. The door was locked, something that had never been allowed in reverse. Garrett had free access to everything of Marina's, but his space was sacred. Using a trick Simone showed her, Marina jimmied the simple lock open. What they found inside made her gasp. The walls were covered with printouts. Photos of Marina at her desk. Screenshots of her computer screen. Copies of client documents. And most damning of all, a detailed timeline on a whiteboard labeled Project Freedom. Marina stepped closer, reading her husband's handwriting. Phase 1, establish pattern of erratic behavior, her blackouts documented. Phase 2, access client accounts, transfer funds in small increments. Phase 3, create digital trail pointing to Marina. Phase 4, anonymous tip to authorities. Phase 5, divorce filing while she's arrested. Phase 6, collect father's money, disappear. Below that, another note, target amount, $2.3 million from RC accounts. Timeline, complete by end of month. RC, Marina whispered. Richard Chun. Not Richard, wait. She turned to Simone. Your last name is Chun. Simone's face had gone pale. Richard Chun is my uncle. He asked me to recommend an accountant 7 years ago. I recommended you. The room spun. This wasn't just about Garrett stealing from his father. He was going to steal from Simone's family, frame Marina, and destroy both of their lives in the process. Yara was already photographing everything with her phone. There's more here. Look. In a drawer, they found bottles of sleeping medication, several different types, all prescribed to fake names at various pharmacies. There was also a journal where Garrett had meticulously documented every time he'd drugged Marina, what dose he'd used, and how long she'd been unconscious. November 3rd, 15 milligrams in dinner wine. Out for 6 hours. Accessed Whitmore account, $12,000 transfer. November 17th, 20 milligrams in evening tea. Out for 5 hours. Photographed Jensen documents. The entries went on and on. Dozens of times. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, moved in small amounts that wouldn't trigger immediate alerts. He's been stealing for months, Marina breathed. And when they discover it, all the access logs will show it was me. My computer. My passwords. My fingerprints. Not if we move first, Simone said firmly. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling Uncle Richard. And then I'm calling the police. Wait, Marina grabbed Simone's arm. If we call the police now, Garrett will just say I'm making it up. That I'm trying to cover my tracks because I got caught stealing. He's been building this case for months. We need more. Simone paused, then nodded slowly. You're right. We need him to confess, or at least to reveal his plan in a way we can record. I have an idea, Marina said, her voice steadier now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something harder, colder. But I need you to trust me. 2 hours later, Marina sat at her kitchen table, waiting. She'd sent Simone and Yara away, but they were parked down the street with recording equipment. Marina had placed her phone on the counter, hidden behind a fruit bowl, set to record everything. At 7 a.m., Garrett emerged from the bedroom, stretching and yawning. He smiled when he saw Marina, that same warm smile she'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. Now it looked like a predator's grin. "Morning, babe. You're up early." He moved to kiss her forehead. Marina forced herself not to flinch. "I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking a lot lately." "Yeah. About what?" He moved to the coffee maker, starting his morning routine. "About us. About our future." Marina kept her voice soft, vulnerable. "Garrett, I want to do something special for you." He turned, interest flickering in his eyes. "Special how?" "I know I've been the main breadwinner, and I know that's been hard on your ego." She saw him stiffen slightly. "But I want you to know that I trust you completely. I think I want to add your name to some of my client accounts. Give you access to help me manage them. You've got such a good business mind, and I've been so tired lately." Garrett's eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. He tried to hide it, but Marina saw it clearly. This was what he'd been waiting for, an even easier path to the money. "Marina, that's really thoughtful." He sat down across from her, taking her hands. "Are you sure? That's a big responsibility." "I'm sure," she lied. "In fact, I was thinking we should start with your father's accounts. Show him that we're a team, that you're trustworthy. Maybe it would help repair your relationship with him." Garrett's mask slipped for just a second. A flash of something ugly crossed his face before the smile returned. Yeah, that could work. When were you thinking?" "Today, actually. I could add you to the account management system this morning." Marina watched him carefully. "Unless you think that's too fast?" No, today is perfect." He squeezed her hands. "You know what? This calls for a celebration. Let me make you some of that special coffee you love. The one from that cafe downtown." Marina's stomach clenched, but she smiled. "That would be lovely." She watched as Garrett prepared the coffee, his back to her. She saw him reach into his pocket, pull out a small pill bottle, and tap something into her cup. He stirred it carefully, making sure it dissolved completely, then turned with a bright smile. "Here you go, babe. Made with extra love." Marina took the cup, raised it to her lips, and pretended to drink. She let the liquid touch her lips but didn't swallow, then set the cup down. "Delicious. Thank you, honey." They talked for a few more minutes, Marina pretending to slowly grow drowsy. She let her words slur slightly, her eyelids droop. Garrett watched her with barely concealed anticipation. "You look tired, Marina. Why don't you go lie down for a bit?" Maybe I should." She stood unsteadily, and Garrett immediately moved to support her, guiding her toward the couch. Marina let herself be led, let herself collapse onto the cushions. She closed her eyes and regulated her breathing to mimic sleep. Through her barely open eyelids, she watched Garrett. He stood over her for a long moment, then smiled. It wasn't a loving smile. It was triumphant, cruel. "Stupid woman," he muttered. "You actually thought I loved you? You were always just a meal ticket. A pathway to my father's money." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, it's me," he said quietly. "She's out. Meet me at the house in 20 minutes. We're going to clean out as much as we can today, then I'll plant the evidence we discussed." "Yes, the fake documents showing she was gambling." "Perfect. Once she's arrested, I file for divorce and we're golden." Marina's heart pounded, but she kept her breathing steady. She heard Garrett moving around, heard him opening her laptop, typing quickly. Then she heard the front door open. "Police. Hands where we can see them." Garrett spun around, his phone clattering to the floor. "What the hell?" 3 officers entered, followed by Simone, Yara, and an older man Marina recognized from photographs, Richard Chun, Garrett's father. Marina sat up from the couch, fully alert. "I didn't drink the coffee, Garrett. But you confessed to everything anyway." Garrett's face went through a rapid series of transformations. Shock, confusion, anger, and finally, desperate calculation. "Marina, what is this? What's going on? Dad, why are you here?" Richard Chun looked at his son with an expression of profound disappointment and disgust. "I'm here because Attorney Chun informed me that my own son has been drugging his wife and stealing from my accounts." "Is this true, Garrett?" "No, of course not. Marina's been acting crazy lately, she's been." "We have video footage," Simone interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. "From Marina's office security cameras. We have your journal documenting every time you drugged her. We have the pills you've been using, which we'll test for fingerprints. And we have a recording from this morning of you confessing to the entire plan." Marina held up her phone, which had been recording from behind the fruit bowl. "Including the part where you called me stupid and said I was just a meal ticket." The color drained from Garrett's face. He looked around wildly, like a trapped animal seeking an escape route. You don't understand. My father cut me off. He gave everything to charity and distant relatives instead of his own son. I deserved that money. You deserved nothing, Richard said coldly. I cut you off because you've never worked an honest day in your life. Because you use people. Because you're exactly the kind of man I hoped you'd never become. He turned to the police officers. I want him arrested. I'll be pressing full charges. Mr. Chun, we need to verify, one officer began. I can help with that, came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a distinguished woman in a sharp business suit enter. She was African American, perhaps in her early 50s, with an air of quiet authority. I'm Detective Lisa Morrison, Financial Crimes Division. We've actually been investigating unusual account activity linked to Marina Hayes for the past 3 weeks. She looked at Marina with something like apology. I'm sorry, Ms. Hayes. You were our primary suspect until yesterday when Attorney Chun contacted us with new information. Marina felt her legs go weak. You were investigating me? Several of your clients reported small, unusual transactions. Nothing huge, but consistent. We were building a case. Detective Morrison turned her sharp gaze to Garrett. Until we realized all the access was happening during times when you, Ms. Hayes, reported being unable to account for your time. Once we knew to look for it, we found pharmacy records, purchasing patterns, and a digital trail that led right to your husband. Garrett made a sudden lunge for the back door, but 2 officers were already there. They grabbed him, pulling his arms behind his back. No, you can't do this. Marina, tell them. Tell them you're my wife. You can't testify against me. Marina stood, walking slowly toward him. She looked at this man she'd shared a bed with, cooked for, supported through every failed venture, loved with her whole heart. And she felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Actually, Garrett, I can testify. Spousal privilege doesn't protect you from testimony about crimes committed against the spouse. She tilted her head. I looked it up last hour while you were sleeping. Just to be sure. You bitch. Garrett lunged toward her, but the officers held him firmly. Mr. Hayes, Detective Morrison said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for multiple counts of drugging without consent, identity theft, wire fraud, computer fraud, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. You have the right to remain silent. As the detective read Garrett his rights, Marina watched him being cuffed. She waited to feel something. Satisfaction, anger, grief. Instead, she just felt tired. So incredibly tired. Richard Chun approached her gently. Ms. Hayes, I owe you an enormous apology. If I had been a better father, perhaps my son wouldn't have turned out this way. If I had maintained a relationship with him, perhaps I would have known what he was doing to you. Mr. Chun, you're not responsible for his choices, Marina said softly. Perhaps not, but I am responsible for mine. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a termination of your employment contract, effective immediately. Marina's heart sank. Of course. She was too much liability now, too much drama. Along with a severance package equal to 2 years' salary, Richard continued, and a recommendation letter for any position you choose to pursue. You've been nothing but professional and ethical throughout this nightmare. The least I can do is ensure you land on your feet. As the police led Garrett out in handcuffs, he twisted back to look at Marina one last time. You'll regret this. You're nothing without me. You'll end up alone and miserable. Marina said nothing. She simply watched him go, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders with each step he took away from her. When the door closed, the room fell silent. Richard Chun, Simone, Yara, and Detective Morrison all looked at Marina with varying expressions of concern. Ms. Hayes, Detective Morrison said, I need you to come to the station later today to give a formal statement. But first, I think you should know something. She pulled out a tablet and opened a file. When we started investigating your accounts, we dug deep. And we found something unusual. Marina's stomach clenched. What do you mean? The transactions we were tracking? They started exactly 6 months ago. But when we went back further, we found something else. She showed Marina a series of bank statements. For the first 5 years of your marriage, your personal savings account was growing steadily. You were putting away money every month, building quite a nest egg. Then, about 18 months ago, the account started draining. Slowly at first, then faster. Marina stared at the numbers. She'd stopped checking that account regularly after Garrett had convinced her they should combine their finances, like a real married couple. He'd said separate accounts showed a lack of trust. Where did the money go? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Multiple transfers to an account under the name G. Hayes Development LLC. A company that doesn't actually exist except on paper. Detective Morrison swiped to another screen. Your husband drained approximately $180,000 from your personal savings over 18 months before he even started the drugging scheme. The room spun. Marina grabbed the edge of the table. $180,000? That's not all, Simone said gently, pulling out her own folder. When we started looking into Garrett's background, I found something troubling. Marina, what did Garrett tell you about his past relationships? He said he'd never been married before. That he'd dated but never found the right person until me. Simone slid several documents across the table. Garrett Hayes was married before. Twice, actually. The first marriage lasted 3 years and ended when his wife, a successful software engineer, filed for bankruptcy and divorce simultaneously. She claimed he'd stolen her identity and racked up massive debts in her name. Marina's hands trembled as she picked up the papers. The second marriage was shorter, Simone continued. Just 18 months. The wife was a pharmaceutical sales representative. She ended up losing her job after controlled substances went missing from her company inventory. Garrett was never charged, but the dates of the thefts coincided with their marriage. She went to prison for 2 years. Oh my God, Marina whispered. Both women tried to press charges against Garrett, Detective Morrison added. But in both cases, he'd been careful. The evidence pointed to them, not him. He's been doing this for years, Marina. You're just the first one he got caught with. Yara moved to Marina's side, putting an arm around her shoulders. He's a professional con artist. This was never about love. You were a mark. Marina felt something crack inside her chest. All those years. All that love she'd given freely. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every moment of doubt she'd pushed away because she believed in their marriage. It had all been a lie from the very beginning. Ms. Hayes, Richard Chin said quietly. My niece told me that you bought the townhouse you live in before you married my son. Is that correct? Marina nodded numbly. And you've been making the mortgage payments from your salary? Yes. Garrett said his money was tied up in investments. Richard and Simone exchanged a look. We need to check something, Simone said. Do you know if Garrett ever refinanced the house or took out a loan against it? Marina's blood ran cold. He said we should refinance last year to get a better rate. He handled all the paperwork because I was working so much overtime. 10 minutes and several phone calls later, they had the answer. Garrett had taken out a $200,000 home equity line of credit against Marina's house. The money was gone, funneled into various accounts, and spent on a lifestyle Marina had never seen. Expensive hotels, designer purchases, and deposits on luxury apartments in 3 different cities. He was planning to disappear, Detective Morrison said. Once you were arrested for the theft from Richard Chen's accounts, Garrett would have divorced you, claimed half the value of your house, and vanished with everything. You would have gone to prison, and he would have started over somewhere else. Probably looking for victim number 4. Marina couldn't speak. The magnitude of the betrayal was too enormous to process. This wasn't just a husband who'd betrayed her. This was a predator who'd systematically dismantled her entire life. There's one more thing, Simone said hesitantly. Marina, when did you and Garrett meet? 6 years ago. I was at a financial planning seminar downtown. He sat next to me, we started talking, and Marina trailed off, seeing the look on Simone's face. What? That seminar was sponsored by my uncle's company. It was specifically for people who managed high-net-worth accounts. Simone's voice was gentle but firm. Garrett didn't meet you by accident, Marina. He targeted you because you had access to money. He researched you, found out who your clients were, and positioned himself to meet you. The room tilted. Marina gripped the table harder, feeling like she might fall through the floor. Every memory, every moment, every conversation had been calculated. Manufactured. Fake. I need some air, she managed to say. Yara helped her to the back porch, where Marina collapsed onto a chair and finally let herself break down. Sobs tore through her chest, 6 years of manipulation, and lies crashing down all at once. She cried for the woman she'd been, so trusting and hopeful. She cried for the life she'd thought she had, which had never existed. And she cried for the piece of herself she'd lost, the part that had believed in love and partnership and shared dreams. But even as she cried, something else began to grow in her chest. Something hard and bright and burning. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind that fades quickly. This was cold anger, the kind that crystallizes into resolve. Garrett had taken 6 years of her life, her savings, her home equity, and nearly her freedom. He'd drugged her, used her, and planned to destroy her completely. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd let her wake up. Marina dried her eyes and walked back inside. The tears were gone, replaced by a steely determination that made everyone in the room straighten slightly. "What do I need to do?" she asked Detective Morrison. "Right now? Give a statement. Provide access to your accounts and computer systems. Help us build an airtight case." The detective studied Marina's face. "But I'm guessing you're asking about something more than that." "I want everything," Marina said quietly. "I want him to lose everything he took from me and everything he planned to take. I want the other wives to see justice. And I want to make sure he never does this to anyone else." Simone smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a shark scenting blood. "Then you need to hire me as your attorney. Not for criminal matters, that's the DA's job. But for everything else." "I don't have money for an attorney right now," Marina said, thinking of her drained savings and mortgaged house. "You will," Richardson interjected. "Consider it a loan against your severance package. My niece is the best family law attorney in the state. And if anyone can tear apart what my son has built, it's her." Over the next 2 hours, they formulated a plan. Detective Morrison would pursue criminal charges. Multiple counts of drugging, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The DA was particularly interested in connecting Garrett to his previous wives' cases, possibly reopening them with new evidence. Simone would handle the civil side: divorce proceedings, asset recovery, restraining orders, and civil suits for emotional damages and fraud. But Marina wanted something more. "His father," she said suddenly. "Richard, you said Garrett resented being cut off. What would hurt him more than anything?" Richard thought for a moment, then understanding dawned. Public humiliation. Garrett's always cared desperately about appearances, about what people think. Even as a child, he'd rather lie and maintain an image than tell the truth. "Then that's what we'll take from him," Marina said. "His image. His reputation. Everything." Simone pulled out her phone. "I have a friend who works in investigative journalism. If we give her the story, with full documentation, he'll be exposed," Marina finished. "Not just to the police and lawyers, but to everyone. His friends, his social circles, everyone he's ever conned or planned to con." "Are you sure?" Yara asked gently. "Your name will be in the story too. People will know what happened to you." Marina thought about the other wives, women who'd lost everything and gone to prison while Garrett walked away clean. She thought about future victims, women who might meet a charming man and never suspect the monster underneath. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "I'm not ashamed of being a victim. I'm only ashamed that I didn't see it sooner." 3 days later, Marina sat in a television studio, her hands folded calmly in her lap despite the cameras pointed at her. Across from her sat Jennifer Wu, an investigative journalist whose exposés had taken down corrupt politicians and corporate fraudsters. Today, she would help Marina take down a monster of a different kind. "We're recording in 5, 4, 3. The cameraman counted down silently with his fingers. "Good evening, I'm Jennifer Wu, and tonight we're bringing you an exclusive investigation into a man who has destroyed multiple lives over the past decade through calculated manipulation, fraud, and abuse. But this story is also about survival and the courage it takes to fight back." Jennifer turned to Marina. "Thank you for being here, Marina. I know this isn't easy." Marina took a deep breath. Over the past 3 days, she'd given her statement to police, filed for divorce, and met with Garrett's previous wives. Women who'd been shocked and relieved to learn they weren't alone, that their instincts about Garrett had been right all along. "Thank you for giving me this platform," Marina said, her voice steady. "I'm here because I don't want anyone else to go through what I've been through." Over the next hour, Marina told her story. Jennifer supplemented it with documents, video evidence, and interviews with Detective Morrison and the previous wives who'd agreed to come forward. The security footage of Garrett drugging Marina's coffee played on screen. His journal entries were read aloud. The financial trail of theft and fraud was laid out in stark detail. But the most damning moment came when Jennifer played audio from the morning of Garrett's arrest, his voice calling Marina stupid, admitting she was just a meal ticket, laughing about his plan to frame her and disappear. Garrett Hayes presented himself as a victim of a wealthy, cold father, Jennifer narrated. He told people he was an entrepreneur, a visionary, a man who'd been unfairly denied his birthright. But in reality, he was a serial predator who targeted successful women, drained them financially, and discarded them when they were no longer useful. In 2 cases, those women went to prison for crimes he committed. The show included statements from those 2 women, both now released and working to rebuild their lives. They spoke about the years stolen from them, the reputation damage, the trauma. Finally, Jennifer turned back to Marina. "What do you want people to know?" Marina looked directly into the camera. "I want people to know that abuse doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like kindness. Like special coffee brought to you by someone who claims to love you. Like a partner who handles all the finances so you don't have to worry. Like someone who isolates you so slowly and subtly that you don't realize you're trapped until it's almost too late." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I also want people to know that if you're in this situation, it's not your fault. These people are professionals at manipulation. They study you, learn your weaknesses, and exploit them. Being fooled doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human." "And what about Garrett Hayes? What do you want to say to him?" Jennifer asked. Marina's expression hardened. "I want him to know that he didn't break me. He tried to destroy my life, steal my freedom, and leave me with nothing. But he failed. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man he is." The interview aired on a Friday night and immediately went viral. By Saturday morning was trending nationally. The combination of video evidence, multiple victims, and the sheer audacity of his crimes captured public attention in a way few stories did. Garrett's friends and social circles, the people he'd spent years cultivating, turned on him instantly. Former business associates released statements denouncing him. The country club where he'd maintained a membership on Richard's family name revoked it. Every door he'd once walked through confidently slammed shut. In jail, Garrett watched the interview on a small television in the common area. Other inmates recognized him immediately. The ones with wives, girlfriends, daughters, and sisters on the outside had particular contempt for a man who drugged women. His court-appointed attorney advised him to take a plea deal. With the video evidence, the journal, the testimony of multiple victims, and the audio recording, a trial would be a massacre. But Garrett's ego wouldn't let him accept defeat. "I'll testify," he insisted. "I'll explain everything. She's making me look like a monster. I just need to tell my side." His attorney sighed. "Mr. Hayes, you are a monster. And if you testify, the prosecutor will tear you apart." He was right. The trial began 6 weeks later. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented evidence chronologically, first establishing Garrett's pattern with his previous wives, then detailing every instance of drugging Marina, every stolen dollar, every manipulated document. Marina took the stand on the 3rd day. She wore a simple navy suit and spoke clearly, without emotion, recounting facts. The defense attorney tried to shake her during cross-examination, suggesting she'd known about the drugging and was complicit, that she was bitter about the divorce and making false accusations. Marina remained calm. "Why would I report myself to the police for crimes I supposedly committed? Why would I give them evidence that showed my husband drugging me? That doesn't make sense." The defense attorney had no good answer. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source, Richard Chen. "My son called me 2 weeks before his arrest," Richard testified, his voice heavy with regret. "He asked to meet for dinner. I thought perhaps he wanted to reconcile. Instead, he asked me to invest in a new business venture. He needed $2 million to get started." "And did you agree?" the prosecutor asked. "No. I told him the same thing I've told him since he was 25. Earn it yourself. Build something real." Richard's hands clenched on the witness stand. He became enraged. "He told me I'd regret it. That I'd see him succeed without my help. That he had other resources he could tap. And what did you understand other resources to mean?" "At the time, I thought he meant investors or loans. Now I know he meant my accounts. The ones my daughter-in-law managed. He was going to steal from me and frame the woman he'd married." Richard looked at his son with profound sadness. "I failed as a father. I raised someone capable of this." Garrett's face reddened with fury. He whispered something to his attorney, who shook his head firmly. Against all advice, Garrett insisted on testifying. It was a disaster. On the stand, Garrett tried to present himself as a victim of circumstances. He claimed Marina had been controlling and financially abusive. He said the drugging was just to help her sleep, because she'd been so stressed. He insisted the money he'd taken was rightfully his as her husband. The prosecutor let him talk, giving him enough rope to hang himself. Then came the cross-examination. Mr. Hayes, you testified that you were trying to help your wife with her stress. Is that correct? Yes, exactly. By drugging her without her knowledge or consent. I was just trying to help her rest. The prosecutor held up Garrett's journal. Is this your handwriting, Mr. Hayes? Yes. Please read the entry from November 3rd. Garrett's face paled. I don't. Read it for the jury, please. Garrett's hands shook as he read. 15 milligrams in dinner wine. Out for 6 hours. Accessed Whitmore account, $12,000 transfer. His voice barely rose above a whisper. That doesn't sound like helping someone sleep, Mr. Hayes. That sounds like drugging someone so you could rob them and their clients. Would you agree? It's not what it sounds like. No. Then please explain to the jury what accessed Whitmore account, $12,000 transfer, means in the context of helping your wife rest. Garrett had no answer. He stuttered, contradicted himself, and finally broke down, shouting that none of this would have happened if his father had just given him what he deserved, if Marina hadn't been so naive, if everyone hadn't conspired against him. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was held 3 weeks later. Marina attended, sitting in the front row with Simone beside her. Garrett's previous wives were there too, finally able to face the man who'd destroyed their lives. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and no-nonsense demeanor. She'd read every page of evidence, watched every video, reviewed every document. Mr. Hayes, she began, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many criminals. Thieves, fraudsters, violent offenders. But what you represent is particularly insidious. You didn't just steal money. You stole trust, safety, and years of life from multiple women. You drugged your wife repeatedly, violated her autonomy, and planned to send her to prison for crimes you committed. Garrett stared at the floor, his expensive suit rumpled, his face gaunt from weeks in jail. The prosecution has recommended 15 years. The defense has asked for leniency, citing your lack of violent criminal history. But I find that your crimes, while not physically violent in the traditional sense, represent a profound violation of trust and human dignity. The judge paused, letting the weight of her words settle. I am sentencing you to 25 years in state prison on the combined charges of drugging, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. $180,000 to Marina Hayes for stolen savings, $200,000 for fraudulent home equity, $340,000 to Richard Chun for attempted theft, and $75,000 each to your previous wives for damages. That's a total of $690,000 in restitution. Garrett's head snapped up. I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll work in prison, and every cent you earn will go toward that debt. It will follow you for the rest of your life. The judge's expression was granite. You targeted successful women and tried to destroy them. Now you'll spend the next quarter-century understanding what it means to have nothing. As the bailiffs led Garrett away, he turned to look at Marina one last time. She met his gaze steadily, without flinching, without pity. He'd wanted her broken and destroyed. Instead, she'd become stronger than he could have imagined. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of reporters waited. Marina had prepared a brief statement with Simone's help. Today, justice was served, she said into the microphones. But this isn't just about one man going to prison. It's about recognizing that abuse takes many forms. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and drugging are all forms of violence, even if they don't leave physical scars. She looked directly into the cameras. To anyone watching who sees themselves in my story, you deserve better. You deserve safety, respect, and autonomy. And there are people who will help you. Reach out. Speak up. Don't wait until you wake up one morning and can't remember the night before. A reporter shouted a question. What's next for you, Ms. Hayes? Marina smiled, and it was genuine. I'm going to rebuild. One day at a time. 6 months after Garrett's sentencing, Marina stood in the lobby of a sleek downtown office building, looking up at the directory. There, on the 5th floor listing, was a name that still felt surreal. Marina Hayes Financial Advocacy and Consulting. The restitution money had started coming in, slowly, as Garrett worked prison jobs that paid pennies per hour, but it was coming. Richard Chun had also done something unexpected. He'd returned to Marina the full amount Garrett had tried to steal from his accounts, calling it payment for pain and suffering caused by my family. With that money, Marina had paid off the fraudulent home equity loan, rebuilt her savings, and done something she'd never imagined: started her own business. But this wasn't just another financial consulting firm. Yara met her in the lobby, carrying 2 coffee cups. "Ready for the big day?" Marina smiled, taking the cup. "More than ready." They rode the elevator up to the 5th floor, where a small but growing team waited. The office space was modest but bright, with large windows overlooking the city. On the walls hung framed photos: Marina with Richard Chun at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Marina with Detective Morrison receiving a community service award, Marina with Jennifer Wu at a women's advocacy conference. But the photo that meant the most to Marina was the one on her desk. Her standing between Garrett's 2 previous wives, all 3 women with their arms around each other, smiling. The caption read, "Survivors, not victims." "Okay, everyone," Marina called out, and her small team gathered around. There were 5 of them. 2 other women who'd escaped financially abusive relationships and were now certified financial counselors, a paralegal who specialized in family law, a social worker, and a tech specialist who developed their security systems. "We have 3 new clients starting today," Marina continued. "All referrals from the domestic violence shelter. These women are trying to rebuild their lives after leaving dangerous situations. Our job is to help them understand their finances, protect their assets, and build independence. Remember, we're not just managing money. We're providing tools for freedom." The team nodded, energized and ready. Marina's business model was unique. She worked with traditional high-net-worth clients, charging them premium rates, and used that income to provide free or low-cost services to abuse survivors. She'd also developed a series of workshops on financial literacy and recognizing financial abuse, which she delivered at shelters, community centers, and universities. The venture had caught the attention of several major foundations. Just last week, Marina had signed a partnership agreement with a national nonprofit that would allow her to franchise the model, training other survivors to open similar practices in their cities. Later that afternoon, Marina had a meeting that made her nervous in a way client consultations never did. Richard Chin arrived at her office precisely on time, carrying a leather portfolio. Over the past 6 months, he'd become something of a mentor to Marina, offering business advice and connecting her with potential investors and clients. But today's meeting was different. "Marina," Richard began, settling into the chair across from her desk, "I've been thinking about legacy, about what I want to leave behind when I'm gone." "Mr. Chun." "Richard, please. We're past formalities." He smiled gently. "I told you once that I failed as a father. I can't undo Garrett's crimes, but I can try to create something positive from the wreckage." He opened his portfolio and slid a document across the desk. Marina picked it up, her eyes widening as she read. This is a $5 million grant. "For your foundation," Richard confirmed. "I'm establishing the Langston Hayes Foundation for Financial Independence, named after my late father, who believed in self-reliance, and after you, who embodies it. The foundation will support your work expanding services to abuse survivors nationwide." Marina's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll continue doing what you're doing. Say you'll help ensure that what my son did to you and others never happens unchallenged again." Richard's voice was thick with emotion. "I can't change the past, but maybe we can change someone's future." Marina stood and walked around the desk, offering her hand. Richard took it, then surprised her by pulling her into a brief, fatherly hug. "Thank you," Marina whispered, "for believing in me, for supporting this work." "No," Richard said, stepping back and meeting her eyes. "Thank you for turning something evil into something good. That takes a strength I'm not sure I possess." That evening, Marina drove to a place she hadn't visited in months. The small church where she and Garrett had married 6 years ago. She wasn't there for nostalgia or pain. She was there to meet someone. In the parking lot, a nervous young woman waited by a beaten-up sedan. She was thin, with dark circles under her eyes and hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Marina recognized the signs immediately. "Sarah?" Marina called gently, approaching slowly. The woman nodded. "You're Marina Hayes? The one from the news?" "That's me." Marina gestured to the church steps. "Want to sit?" They sat side by side as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "My boyfriend," Sarah began, then stopped. "My fiancé. We're supposed to get married next month. But lately I've been having these gaps. Times I can't remember. And our money keeps disappearing, and he says I'm spending it, but I don't remember buying anything, Anne. Her voice broke. Marina put a hand on her shoulder. Sarah, listen to me very carefully. What you're describing, the memory gaps, the missing money, the confusion, those are exactly what I experienced. And I know how scary it is to think that the person you love might be the one hurting you. But he's been so kind lately, Sarah protested weakly. He brings me special drinks to help me relax. He says I've been working too hard. Marina's blood ran cold. Hearing her own story echoed back to her. Sarah, I want you to do something for me. I want you to pretend to drink one of those drinks, but don't actually swallow. Then I want you to record what happens after you pretend to fall asleep. Can you do that? Sarah's eyes widened with fear and understanding. You think he's drugging me? I think you need to know the truth, whatever it is. And I think you need to be safe while you find out. Marina pulled a business card from her purse. This is Detective Morrison with Financial Crimes. She helped me. Call her tomorrow and tell her everything. Then call my office. Whatever you need, a lawyer, a safe place to stay, financial help, we'll provide it. I don't have money for. It's free, Sarah. That's what we do. We help women like us. Marina squeezed her hand. You don't have to go through this alone. I did, and I survived, but you don't have to. Sarah clutched the card like a lifeline, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for believing me. Everyone else says I'm just stressed, that I'm being paranoid about my fiancé. I know, Marina said softly. They said the same thing to me. But trust your instincts, Sarah. If something feels wrong, it probably is. They sat together until the last light faded from the sky. When Sarah finally left, Marina remained on the steps, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. 6 years ago, she'd walked into this church as a bride, believing in love and forever. She'd been so innocent, so trusting. That woman was gone. But the woman who'd replaced her was stronger, wiser, and dedicated to ensuring that other women didn't have to learn these lessons the hard way. 3 years after Garrett's conviction, Marina received an unexpected letter. It was from the prison, and the return address showed Garrett's inmate number. She almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity, or perhaps a need for closure, made her break the seal. The letter was short. Marina, I know I have no right to write to you. I know an apology means nothing after what I did. But I need you to understand that I'm sorry. Prison has given me time to think about the man I became. My therapist says I have narcissistic personality disorder and that I used people because I couldn't see them as real. I'm working on that now. I heard about your business, about the foundation, about the women you're helping. Part of me hates that you turned what I did into something positive because it makes me look even worse. But another part, a part I'm trying to listen to more, is glad that something good came from something terrible. You were right in the courtroom. I did want to break you. I wanted to take everything and leave you with nothing. But I failed. You're stronger than I ever was. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You were never the weak one. I was. Garrett. Marina read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a file marked closure. She didn't feel anger anymore when she thought about Garrett. She didn't feel pain or betrayal. She felt nothing. He'd become irrelevant to her life, a chapter that was finished. What she felt instead was gratitude, not for what he'd done, but for what she'd become in spite of it. That weekend, Marina attended the grand opening of the third Marina Hayes Financial Advocacy Office, this one in Atlanta. The franchisee was one of Garrett's previous wives, the software engineer who'd spent years rebuilding her credit and reputation. I never thought I'd have a business again, the woman said during her speech. I never thought anyone would trust me with their finances after what happened. But Marina showed me that our past doesn't define our future. Our response to adversity does. The crowd applauded. In the audience sat dozens of women at various stages of recovery. Some just beginning their journey, others years into rebuilding, all of them connected by the common thread of survival. After the ceremony, a young reporter approached Marina. Ms. Hayes, your story has inspired thousands of women to leave abusive situations and rebuild their lives. How does that feel? Marina considered the question carefully. It feels like purpose, she finally said. For a long time, I thought my purpose was to be a good wife, to support my husband, to make him happy. I bent myself into smaller and smaller shapes trying to fit into his life. She paused, looking around at the women in the room. But that wasn't purpose. That was self-erasure. Real purpose came when I stopped asking what I could do for someone else and started asking what I could do for myself and for others who needed help. What would you say to women who are in situations like yours but afraid to leave? Marina's expression grew serious. I'd say that fear is understandable. Leaving is dangerous. Staying is dangerous. There's no safe option when you're with someone who wants to destroy you. But I'd also say that you're stronger than you think. You've survived 100% of your worst days so far. And there are people like me, people who've been where you are, who will help you survive the next ones. The reporter scribbled notes. And what about forgiveness? Have you forgiven Garrett Hayes? Marina smiled slightly. I've forgiven myself for trusting him. That's the only forgiveness that matters. 5 years after Garrett's arrest, Marina stood in front of a congressional committee, advocating for stronger laws around financial abuse and coercive control. Her foundation now operated in 23 cities, helping thousands of women annually. Sarah, the young woman Marina had met at the church, sat in the audience. She'd left her fiancé that night 5 years ago and had recently graduated with a degree in social work. She now worked at Marina's original office, helping new clients navigate the path Marina had walked. Richard Chun, now in his 70s, watched via video stream, his legacy secured not through his son, but through the woman his son had tried to destroy. As Marina finished her testimony, she looked directly at the camera broadcasting the hearing. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you've lost time, if money is disappearing, if someone is isolating you or making you doubt your own mind, please know this. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are being abused. And you deserve help. She paused, her voice strong and clear. They tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a seed. And now, I've grown into something they never expected. Someone who fights back. Not just for myself, but for all of us.